debut as a promising successor to 통일 rice.
While overshadowed by record-breaking harvests and the declaration of rice self-sufficiency, 1976 was actually a heartbreaking year for RDA agronomists. This was due to the catastrophic failure of Yushin rice, which had been proudly unveiled as the successor variety to 통일. What exactly was Yushin rice, and what were its strengths and weaknesses? Moreover, why does the name Yushin rice remain unfamiliar to most people today, despite its infamous performance? Yushin, or Erie 317, was developed at the Honam Crops Experiment Station in Erie, North Jeolla Province in 1974. Erie 317 was a hybrid of 통일 IR667 and IR1317, a next-generation star variety made in the International Rice Research Institute, expected to inherit both 통일's high yield and IR1317's improved taste. Kim In-hwan explained the significance of Yushin's development as follows. Quote, 조생통일 and 영남조생 were selected from strains derived from 통일, but their eating quality remained unimproved. Although 통일 had high yield potential, its low quality resulted in lower market prices than conventional varieties, negatively affecting rural household incomes. At the Honam Crops Experiment Station in 1974, we successfully developed a new variety Yushin, which maintained high yield potential while improving eating quality to match conventional Japonica varieties. At that time, the demand and expectation for quality improvement were extremely high. I personally traveled around the Jeonnam and Gyeongnam regions, tasting samples of this valuable new rice variety to confirm its eating quality firsthand. End quote. Yushin bore similarities to 통일 rice but incorporated traits that made it more suitable for Korean conditions. Although Yushin was derived from 통일, it also inherited characteristics of the Japonica variety 진흥 through its secondary parents, IR1317. Field trials indicated that Yushin's stalk was slightly taller than 통일 but shorter than the traditional Japonica varieties. The grain length and amylose content were intermediate between those of 통일 and Japonica counterparts. Given that amylose content below 20% is considered indicative of soft and palatable rice, Yushin, which contains 19% of amylose, was regarded as a significant improvement over 통일 in terms of both appearance and taste.
The expansion of high-quality, high-yielding rice varieties.
Since Yushin maintained the high-yielding trait of 통일 while allegedly addressing the critical issue of eating quality, it was hailed as a promising variety for the future of IR-based rice breeding in Korea. The fact that it was named after the Yushin regime itself symbolized the government's high expectations and the strong confidence of the RDA in this variety. The RDA decided to distribute all seeds harvested from pilot farms in 1975 to farmers the following year. Consequently, within just 1 year, Yushin's cultivation area expanded nearly 200-fold, exceeding 300,000 hectares in 1976. Although several issues were identified in the trial cultivation, the RDA prioritized rapid large-scale cultivation over addressing these problems gradually, opting instead to educate farmers on necessary precautions. Yushin paved the way for a series of high-yielding varieties with improved eating quality, collectively known as high-quality plus high-yielding varieties, which eventually replaced the 통일 as the dominant type of rice in Korea by the late 1970s. The most frequently used intermediate parent was IR 1317, particularly its sibling lines Suwon 231 and Suwon 232. This line, combined with IR24, another Erie developed high quality plus high yielding indica variety, led to the development of once popular varieties such as Milyang 21 and Raegyong, as well as Milyang 23 and Geumgang. These high quality and high yielding varieties steadily reduced amylose content to better align with Korean consumer preferences. For example, while IR 667 had an amylose content of around 23%, Yushin reduced this to approximately 21%, and later varieties brought it down further to 19 to 20%. The 샛별 variety, or ED 326, even achieved an amylose content as low as 16.3%, lower than many contemporary Japonica varieties. Other factors influencing eating quality, such as grain transparency, shape, and gelatinization temperature, were also consistently improved.
Ecological challenges and the growing uncertainties.
However, the development of high quality plus high yielding varieties was not without its challenges. Due to the rapid pace of development and the pressure to introduce numerous varieties in a short period, many cultivars were hastily distributed to farmers before they could adequately adapt to local environmental conditions. The Rural Development Administration, obsessed with the goal of achieving the Green Revolution, responded to problems with older varieties by promoting newer varieties. This pattern created a downward spiral where the development cycle for new varieties became increasingly shorter, leading to more new varieties being distributed with minimal testing periods. As one can easily predict, those new varieties often encounter unforeseen challenges, particularly when introduced abruptly on a large scale. Yushin exhibited severe vulnerabilities to several plant diseases, including downy mildew, bacterial leaf blight, brown spot disease, sheath blight, and a phenomenon known as red discoloration. As mentioned earlier, downy mildew was a major concern, not just because it could lead to complete failure of harvest, but also because it had not previously been reported in Korea. When seed beds were flooded, Yushin displayed an exceptional susceptibility compared to other varieties under similar conditions. Also, as mentioned earlier, Yushin had raised another concern in 1974 when Korea sent its seeds to Erie for winter multiplication. At Erie, Yushin fields were affected by black streaked dwarf disease, a bacterial infection never before recorded in Korea. Plant pathologists strongly recommended destroying all imported seeds to prevent introducing a new pathogen into the country. However, Kim In-hwan personally assured rigorous disinfection and monitoring throughout the trial cultivation phase and insisted on bringing the seeds into South Korea. In 1976, during its first year of large-scale expansion, Yushin rice proved catastrophic for many farmers in Gyeonggi province. This failure struck an especially hard blow to the RDA, which had viewed Gyeonggi province as the front line in the battle between Japonica varieties and the next generation Tongil type varieties, and has positioned Yushin as the vanguard that would secure victory on this crucial front.
The rice that must not be named. The catastrophic failure of Yushin rice in 1976.
In early July 1976, a previously unseen disease called node rot emerged in Yushin fields in Gimpo and Pyeongtaek. The base of rice stalks turned black and decayed, causing plant to collapse en masse. As harvest approached, the disease spread rapidly, reaching nationwide levels by September 20th, affecting around 8,000 hectares. At first, the RDA downplayed the losses, attributing them to low temperatures, excessive nitrogen fertilizer, and poor farm management rather than genetic flaws. Facing mounting protests from farmers, Gyeonggi Province belatedly announced compensation measures and declared that Yushin would be removed from the list of recommended varieties for 1977. Farmers in Gyeonggi Province quickly lost confidence in Yushin. Its cultivation area plummeted from around 300,000 hectares in 1976 to 230,000 hectares in 1977, then to 100,000 hectares in 1978, and finally to 50,000 hectares in 1979. However, at the time, discussions of Yushin's failure were notably absent from newspapers. The only reference to the issue surfaced 2 years later in 1978 during the Nopung incident. Given the oppressive political climate under the Yushin regime, publicly acknowledging that Yushin had failed would have been unthinkable even when it referred to the mere name of a rice variety. Although uttering the phrase failure of Yushin was taboo at the time, farmers silently but distinctly remembered its failure. The 1976 failure of Yushin rice symbolically demonstrated the limitations of Tongil rice's march to the north. While Tongil-type varieties inheriting subtropical genes showed remarkable success in the southern regions, they struggled to compete with Japonica varieties in the central regions. RDA researchers had ambitiously developed Yushin rice to overcome these challenges, but its ultimate failure marked a turning point. Subsequently, Japonica's dominance in Gyeonggi Province remained unchallenged. Nevertheless, viewing South Korea as a whole, the cultivation area of Tongil-type varieties continued to expand, and national rice production steadily increased. The moment to declare the achievement of the Green Revolution was approaching.